Hi, I'm Leilani Smith, and thank you again for coming by and joining me for Leilani Drinks the Brown Stuff in my backyard. Once again, tonight we are going straight to it. And the reason why is because it's pretty much a household name. Everybody knows this whiskey. It is everywhere on every grocery shelf. It is in every spot that you come to if they're selling whiskey. So tonight we are getting into Jim Beam Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. And I actually bought this because I thought it was going to be a special San Francisco Giants kind of blend, and found out that this sponsor a whole lot of baseball teams. I actually have like a Jim Beam dugout in some of them. So nothing special, just Jim Beam doing its thing, being a part of the world. This Jim Beam is 80 proof. It is 40% alcohol, and this year marks their 225 years of being around. Now, they age their whiskey 4 years, 2 times longer than what's required by making straight bourbon whiskey. They also use, guess what? Alligator char, level number 4. So I found out a little bit more information. And basically what that means is that in the new American oak barrels that they char it good. They char it real good. And it's so scaly and so bumpy that it looks like alligator skin. And they too also use the climate on their hilltop rack houses when they store this whiskey. They also use the Kentucky limestone filtered water. Now, I'm gonna have to try this water because this water is obviously producing a whole lot of whiskey in that region and area. So somebody's gonna need to send me a bottle of this water because it's obviously very special when they use it. I need this Kentucky limestone water in my life. And the reason why whiskey isn't made with regular water is because it has iron in it. And what iron will do to whiskey is turn it black and make it taste metallic. Nobody wants their whiskey tasting like that. Now, their distillery is located outside of Louisville in Claremont, Kentucky. In 2005, it filled its 10 millionth barrel. In 2018, its 15 millionth barrel. This whiskey has basically been ran for 7 generations. So tonight, with all this information, all this history on this Jim Beam that I had to do, we're gonna go ahead and get it started. This party's starting right now. So we are cracking this bottle of whiskey because there's a lot of work for me to do. Oh. A little bit of orange, cinnamon. I feel like I smell a little hint of vanilla tobacco-y, just slight tobacco. But it smells nice, y'all. Oh, let's go ahead and get into my woman's pour because that's what's important. And it's something I'm gonna need to make it through the night tonight. Got some on my fingers. Mama don't waste no whiskey. Yeah, that smells nice. Let's go ahead and get into it. How does this smell? Like lake water to me. It's actually nicer than I thought. A nice little burn. Let's see. That orange is definitely coming through. Not heavy, but just more heavier than I would like. I still like smelling it though, y'all. It can just fill my nostrils. It is smooth. It is smooth. So tonight you're gonna have to wait until the end of all this information to get my kisses on this whiskey. And what's special about tonight, and I hope you will join me, every time I say a major date, I'll be taking a sip of this whiskey and talking at the same time. So I'll be drinking throughout this episode. So who knows how I felt at the beginning, which is indifferent, not bad. Kind of solid, surprisingly. They say it's the #1 bourbon. time will tell, I guess. 1740. 1740, a German immigrant family came over to the U.S. when we were still the 13 colonies. Now, they stayed within the 13 colonies, but in about 48 years, they end up relocating to Kentucky. I think they had an incentive program during this time. And they ended up growing corn and changed their name from Bone to Beam. 1795. Jacob Johannes Beam makes his first batch of whiskey, and he calls it Old Jake Sour Mash. Old Jake Beam Sour Mash. Now, they end up becoming a favorite in Kentucky when Kentucky just turned into a state like within 3 years and had over 2,000 distilleries. What an amazing feat. 1820. Johannes, Jacob, ends up giving the distillery now to his son, David. And David ends up having the smarts to enlarge the distillery. And he changes the pot stills into column stills. And he also changes the whiskey name to Old Tub. What does that mean? They never explained that. Now, in 1854, David ends up finding out that the railways are going to have extensions. So he relocates the whole distillery to Nelson County, Kentucky, so that he's able to ship the whiskey wherever the railways took him. 1894. It's getting warm up in here. D.M. Beam ends up passing down this distillery to his son, James Beauregard Beam, aka Jim, but is it James? Give me 1 second. There's a lot of stuff that's going on and I need to take a look at the notes. It is James Beauregard Beam, aka Jim. Now, he had a few good years, but then all of a sudden, what do you know? Prohibition hits in 1920 and it shuts everything down. So poor Jim ends up trying his hand at coal mining. From what I understand, fail. And then he goes into citrus farming. Double fail, which is great because he is a whiskey man by heart and soul. Now, during this time, and we'll be circling back to it, his daughter, Margaret, ends up marrying Frederick Booker No. And if you know whiskey, you know the name Booker. So you know this is where it's going to go a little bit later. Now, at the age of 70, Prohibition is coming to an end. And Jim didn't want his first taste of whiskey to be someone else's whiskey. He was like, if I'm going to drink some whiskey, it's going to be my whiskey. So, in basically 120 days, this 70-year-old man built a whole distillery with family and friends by hand. Literally building his life by hand so he can taste his own whiskey. And he called that whiskey Old Colonel James B. Beam Bourbon. I think that's right. Let me check my notes again. That's a whole lot of words. Yes, I got it right. Now, James, because of what happened during Prohibition and all this time, he ends up doing this ritual where he will take a jug of his yeast home every weekend so as not to lose that flavor and that first bit of mash. And a great fun fact is that's the mash that they use still to this day. So we are tasting still the same mash as James B. Beam. Now, his son, T. Jeremiah, ended up getting the distillery, refounding the distillery, and he ends up renaming it to Jim Beam Distillery, Jim Beam Distillery, and renaming the bourbon the Colonel James B. Beam because they couldn't use Old Tub anymore because of Prohibition and things changing. He renamed it to Jim Beam in honor of his father and after his father. Damn, the love. 1943. Woo-wee. This whiskey is tasting better though. I can still taste that orange hitting the back of my tongue, and it's nice. T. Jeremiah sees that World War II is coming to a close, and because he doesn't want to have his countrymen basically go without bourbon, he starts shipping his bourbon to all the servicemen, unbeknownst of it being like an amazing smart business move, unbeknownst of wanting for the business to grow or how it would affect the business. He wanted to give bourbon whiskey to our servicemen, and because of that, Jim Beam ended up being all over the world. Also in 1943, let's take another sip since I said that date. Even though it's a repeat, we'll repeat the sip. They started making the labels state, none genuine without my signature. None genuine without my signature. I guess a lot of people were making their own little bootleg whiskey of Jim Beam and he got tired of it. They started making the signature name for everyone. And I'm just saying, I think I'm going on and on now. Run on sentences. 1960. I don't have to drink to this one, but I'm going to because I enjoy, and now you see I really do drink a woman's pour. Jeremiah's brother, it starts with a C, but I cannot remember. He ends up becoming the master distiller in Claremont, Kentucky, and his name is, damn it, I knew it started with a C, Carl. Now we're gonna circle back because I know you guys still kept that information of Frederick Booker No. In 1992, Frederick Booker No III becomes the master distiller of Jim Beam and the 7th generation that takes over this family. Family tradition? Let's not say take over this family. He does make some whiskey and it's called Booker. And we will be getting to that soon enough. The reason why I tell you all this and give you all this information, and it's so necessary and needed, and now you're gonna sound like this Beam whiz, the Beam family, the legacy, all their faces, and some of the dates that I said, they'll show you the master distillers. You know, and now I know, and we know. And that makes for a better tasting whiskey, doesn't it? Which brings me to my point now. Because I've been drinking this whiskey and I'm feeling good. As much as I didn't think I'd like this whiskey as much as I wouldn't say it's the #1 bourbon for me. Maybe for a lot of other people. Price point's great. The whiskey is nice and it has a very mellow taste for it to be Kentucky straight bourbon. So I have to give this bourbon 2.5 kisses. So thank you for sticking around, hearing all that information, finding it out, and now becoming a Beam Whiskey Wonder Man or Wonder Woman. Hello. Enjoy this family tradition. Cheers to Beam.